All right, good day, everyone. My name is Mildred Christopher. I am both the developer of the project and the consultant for this project. And I have some of my team here with me, and we will do a round of introduction again for us to know everyone who is here. So I will start in no particular order. Just introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Edmond Kaboy, and I'm with Miss Mildred as an IT assistant.
Hello, my name is Pascalina Manumi, and I'm an administrative assistant working at the Mildred Consultancy Services.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Okay, my name is Chioma Igwe. I'm also an intern with School of Programming and Software Development.
Good morning, I am Anagha Zoshi. I am an intern here.
Morning, I'm Andrea Williams, working with the Ministry of Health HIV unit at St. Kitts.
Good morning, I'm Matthias Sofrey, the HR Program Coordinator.
Good morning, I'm Harriet Kane. I'm Database Administrator in the Health IT unit.
Good morning, I'm Russell Roberts, Dominica Systems Administrator for Ministry of Health.
I don't even know what we're doing right now.
Hello, good morning. I am Cyprian Solomon from Ministry of Health, St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Everyone introduce themselves.
Good morning, I'm Karen Broderson, ECBS Focal Point, Antigua and Barbuda.
Good morning, I'm Shalaman Daisy, Senior Statistical Assistant, St. Vincent.
All right, welcome everyone. Yesterday we looked at the configuration structure, and we looked at the configuration file of the system. So we're going to run through that and then advance into looking at the source code for the system. I think I have my screen shared. Let me switch screen. As part of the resources for this workshop, the reports for output 2 was shared, and if you go to your dashboard, you will find that report. We looked at how the project started in 2018, and the first round of implementation was done in 2018. Well, apart from St. Vincent that had the implementation in 2017. We, at the time, used DigitalOcean as our virtual private cloud vendor. The OECS Commission maintained the subscription for that. And up until 31st of May, when it was required for all of the countries to create internal servers, for me to configure and clone the system there, the servers were hosted by DigitalOcean, and the domain name was with Namecheap. The domain names now for all islands, now the subdomain of the government domain, and the servers are now internal. All data and system had been migrated to the internal servers. Some countries had 2 servers created, one for pilots and one for production, and some had just 1 server, and it was configured using virtual hosts to run both pilots and production on the same server. We had the focal point for both the ECBS, the clinical part, and the focal point on the IT part appointed, and communications have gone back and forth during all of these processes to make sure that the transition is better. So for those countries that have issues verifying output 3 or verifying that data has been migrated, you can reach out to me for you to look at your back end properly to be able to do that verification. All system was built as version control system, and the reason for this structure back then in 2015 for that decision is we want to make sure that systems can have different versions and countries can decide what version based on the updates or the changes they want to use as ECBS, and that way we have no like breaking changes or changes that will make that maybe limit users from using the system. The CI/CD pipeline is such that we have Git as our version control system. We use GitHub for our repository, and every country has a repository. Each country has a repository for the pilot site and a repository for the live site. The general repository for development I have is this. This is not the repository for the countries. All repositories are private repository, protecting the source code from external access. The OECS Commission, along with the countries, will decide if they want the source code public by December. All repositories are named like this. So these are the live repositories for the countries. The OECS-eCBS / the name of the island are the repositories. Okay. So sorry, can you please mute your mic? Yeah. So we went through the structure, and we looked at how the configuration was done with the environment files. All sensitive information were moved to the environment file, and we used a classes file where we have classes that automatically runs database queries to be able to create tables and insert records, to remove that part of the job from IT. And once that system is installed or pulled, everything becomes automatic. The README file for each of the repositories, when you are handed over your repository, contains steps for you to clone the project on your development server. We first of all need to have a development server. The decision in 2015 was to use PHP from a product that was built with Java. And the reason for that decision was that the argument then was that the skills within the islands are not for Java, and it will be hard for maintenance, and PHP might be easier to find. And so the whole system was rewritten in PHP at the time, and it was a monolith system. Then over time evolved and decentralized to be modular, and now microservices, where we can have different functionalities as a service on its own. The system consists of 3 different major systems working as one. We have the virtual training workshop portal, which is where you logged in through to get to this training. That consists of it's just like a classroom. Just look at it like a classroom, but tailored to having virtual workshops. I think that came about when COVID was starting up, and virtual training workshop was going to be a thing that will stay. And so having a platform where certification can be done, assessments can be done, trainings can be done, was now necessary. It also has the patient management and reporting system. From the homepage of this project, you will find the link to log into both. Now, before the API training workshop, I think comes up in October or November, you will find the API link here. Now, you have these 2 systems, and you log into whichever one. Whenever you want to attend a training workshop, you have to log in here. Whenever you are doing anything with the patient management and reporting system, you have to log in there. You also have the same login at the top here. Now, there has been confusion over time, and even with this training workshop, of people finding it hard to log in. The instructions are just straightforward. You follow it exactly as it is in the manual. Log into patient management and reporting system if you are registering records or trying to enter records for clients, and log into the virtual training workshop portal if you are attending a training workshop. Have the API part of the system, which is uses RESTful API, which we know is a one-way communication, where the ECBS system can receive requests from any system, requests for data, requests for any information. The manual that you will get by the training workshop for the API contains all the endpoints and the definitions, and you will be able to navigate or get data from the ECBS system, or write code within your other health information system to be able to receive information or get information from ECBS. The other way of ECBS getting information from other systems is a different level of discussion that is not covered by this consultancy. So while that is easy to be done, it is a different project outside of this. When this project was set up, it was set up in such a way that security information is not transferred anywhere. We use environment files to keep sensitive information on the server. When we go to the source code and we write our code and we try to push this code to GitHub. We have a gitignore file that lists the files that should not leave the system. And these files contain things that are sensitive or things that should not change or things that are local to an environment. These files contains information that you don't want the outside world to see, like your encryption keys, your passwords, and when you have the API there, the API keys. You want this information to be created on the server when you pull to your production server, and the environment definitions can be different. We created that in the .env file, and that file will hold, or that file holds, all of these variables that you can set the value for depending on what you have in your environment. Let's go to production. Now, we have the project on the development server, which is on the computer wherever you're writing your codes from. And then we have the project cloned on the server where it is now available on the internet for everybody to access. I will SSH into that production, and once you SSH, which is exactly the same method you use to go into your production server for those in IT who are going to or who are maintaining the servers, you will be able to SSH the same way or whatever method you use to access your servers internally, and then you will find your server information. I think you built the server, so you will know exactly what the information you have or when your memory usage is getting to 100%. The root of the application, because we are using Apache web server, is var www.html, and then in this directory we clone all of our projects. Now we have just the project CBS5, and this is where the project is. Now the root of the project has files, and these files are files that control the home page that you see once you go to the site. Within these roots we have folders that now needs that controls access to different parts of the system. When you go to the patient monitoring or the patient portal, or when you go to the site for entering client record, the patient management and reporting system, you will be authenticated, and then you'll be authorized to have different permission. Once your login credential matches a particular role, you'll be authenticated into the home page of the assigned role. Well, now access to the different things that you can do within that role is now limited by the permissions that you are assigned. What you will see when you log in will be different from somebody whose job description is different from yours, based on the role and the permissions that are assigned to you when your account was created by your supervisor or super user. That control is done in the countries/pages directory. In this directory, we have all of the folders that holds the files that controls the functionalities for the different modules of the system. For the patient monitoring and reporting system, we have the developer, the facilitator, the guest, and the participant module. For the virtual training workshop portal, we have the developer, the facilitator, the guest, and the participant. And for the patient monitoring or patient management and reporting system, we have the administration, we have monitoring and reporting, and then we have screenings and management. Each file or each of these modules has an init file. Let's go to each of these has an init file, which is in this includes folder, that protects all of this file from access if you do not have the permission assigned. And in the include folder, we have the initialization file. Now, when we look at this file, we begin to see how it looks at the role you're assigned. And if you're not assigned a developer role, then it just redirects you back to the home page to log in with an account that is assigned that role. And if you're assigned the role, then it begins to create the session for you to now navigate through the different pages of the system. So this is the file that controls access for the module. And so it is named the same way with the other modules. For administration, it becomes administrator init.php. For facilitator, it becomes facilitator init. For guest init, and all of those things. So we try to use the same naming convention so that you know that when you find an init file, it is going to be the file that controls access to protected pages of the source code. Does anyone have any question? So does it make sense so far?
Yes, it does.
Okay. We have this modularity, but they all work together to be able to work as one system. Now we are going to walk through the source code that first of all controls the database, and then we'll walk through the source code that controls the different functionalities for each of the module. For the database, let's look at the database first. So in the database, we use MariaDB server. So we use MySQL for our relational database, and then we have over 241 tables and views that hold data for it. The database is named country. You can change the name of your database in your environment file and rename your database if you want to. Let's use the database and we'll show tables. So now we have, you can see all of the tables and views that exist. Now all of this will be in your documentation on what kind of data each information hold and what form is filled before this information is stored here. So in the event that you want to maybe collect more information, you want to add new columns to add more information to a particular form, you know what database table to alter. We also have a file that creates all of this table. So the first time you use the system, or let's assume that you are going to have a new server, the old server, for some reason you want to change it, or you want to create a new one, or you want to have a new test environment created. When you create that new server, you want to clone the system and you want to fill the values for the environment file. If, for instance, the name of your database that you have given in your environment file is the name of your country, let's say Dominica, for instance, you want to come and create a database called Dominica. Now the table collation and the character set for each of the table that we use was UTF-8. You need to specify the same character set, and the collation we use was UTF-8 Unicode TI. And so when you create your database, because the table and the columns are using the same character set and collation, you want to make your database to have that collation so you don't have issues. We also have, I will exit out of this, a file that we call the classes file. Now in the countries/country directory, we have the environment file.env, where you set the values for your environment. The value you set are all of the database credentials, all of the email credentials, and all of the encryption credentials. You have that in the output too, what the variables are, and you set the value according to the values that you use. Now these values, especially the values for the encryption, should not be changed. I have set the values for you, and all your servers already have your environment files configured. But in the event you change something, you want to change it there, but do not change your encryption keys. The reason is this: you already have thousands of records that are encrypted with those keys. The same key that encrypts is the same key that decrypts. Now, texts that have been encrypted to their ciphertext will need to be decrypted back to plain text using the same input key and block size. Once that changes, then you're never going to get back the original plain text. And that is the reason why you have to leave the input key and the block size just the way it is, except if you are starting all over again, you have no data, that should be the first initial setting before any record goes there. Once records are encrypted with that, you cannot change that, because those records will never be re-identified back to this original text. So we have the classes file. Now this is where we have all the helper functions and all the magic method that does things automatically, and reduces the amount of work that you have to do before you, maybe the first time you configure, or when you want to create new tables to hold new information. All right, so I'll just give time for you to ask questions, and then we'll continue.
Mildred, can you go back to what folder were you in just now?
Okay, let me go back here. So we come to the countries/country directory.
Okay.
It is in the file in the resources, the Output 2 reports. If you don't have it, you can actually download it from your page. So in this file, we have those magic methods that connects to the database and then checks the database if the tables to hold the information already exist. If they don't, you want to create the tables. And this is useful for first-time use. For uses after the first time, it doesn't recreate tables. You just check if the tables exist, so that the first time installation goes automatically. It creates it, and you don't have to do anything about databases. It does it automatically. It creates a table with the definitions. Any table that has to have default records inserted, it checks if there are records inserted. If not, it inserts. If it exists, it does not insert, and does not give any error. It just moves on to the next agenda. So we have this defining all the tables. So in the event you want to have a new form on the system that collects new information, this information has to be stored somewhere, right? And for you to store that information, you have to create a new table to store the information, or alter an old table that is related that you want to add more columns to receive this information. This is the file you come to edit the table definition. When you come here, you look at the table definition for that table based on what is going to be in the database documentation you will get at the end of the training series. You will look for the table. For instance, if what you want to do is to talk about or to add new details to the risk reduction form, then you know that the name of the table is risk reduction, and you want to come here to say, for instance, you want to add something like maybe prep or something here. You want to add a new column, and then you come to this table to add a new column here, and then you write an alter table command, so that when you put an alter table command, it will automatically alter the table that you already have for new records to enter. Now, when you want to have new table or new columns created, you always have to set the constraint to null to allow null values, and the reason is you already have records on those tables that when you set to not null, you begin to have errors for all the thousands of records you have that have no values for that particular column. So new columns must be set to allow nulls, or must be set to default to null, or be set to have a default value, so that all the existing data will be filled with that default value and you have no errors. So that's for database. If you decide you want to change your database table definitions or create new database tables. If you want to create a new table altogether, it is just the same thing. You can just copy this, paste it on a fresh line, and change the names of the variables and the names of the table, and then change the column definitions of everything. We use foreign keys to maintain integrity of the data, so that we don't repeat the same information twice. If I change the name of a user, it should change in every table that holds that username. So because we use foreign keys, everything is connected, and then we keep the integrity of the data tight, so that you don't go to one table and you see the person's date of birth was changed there, and you go to another table and the date of birth is still the old date of birth. No, once it changes in one place, it tails down to all of the child tables. And so most of the updates or changes happens with the parent table, and so the children just inherit it automatically immediately you make those changes. Then we have the dbconfig file and the settings file. This settings file is the file that reads from the environment file. Assuming you have new variables in your environment file, let's say you want to define something like API keys in the environment file, you have to come to the setting files to extract that value into a variable that will be called whenever you include this settings file on any file. Now, when you want to use the values from the environment file, what you include on the top of your headers is the settings file. The settings file holds all of the variables that holds the values that was extracted from the environment file. So now we can see in these settings, you cannot see the real value. The block size, the encryption key, nothing is stated here for anybody to know what it is, to be able to have access to your system or to breach the security of your system, because there are different layers of files. So that is why the .env file is a hidden file that resides on the system where you are using that and is not transferred anywhere. So we only have a file that reads that env file, both in development, in test, and in production. While that was created for you when the migration and configuration of the internal system was done, it is something that you usually follow the documentation to create your environment file in a directory specified by yourself. So in the future, in the events that you change servers, you need to create an environment file on that server. Then we have a file called dbconfig, and this is the file that holds the class that makes the database connection happen. Now, because we use PDO as the abstraction layer between PHP and the database, everything is written using the PDO class. We read from the settings file the variables that hold the sensitive information. And so this file is no longer sensitive. It just reads from a file, and that file reads from another file that just gives us the name of the variable that holds the information without giving us those sensitive information directly. So anybody who reads the source code will not still be able to hack, breach the system, or have access to sensitive information that can compromise the whole security of the system. So as IT, if the IT head has access to everything, the IT head can give access to other IT staff without access to the environment file, and everything remains secure. We have the file that controls the emails you get when you get activation email, or you try to reset your email, or you take an assessment or assessment is due, or reminder, anything that sends out email from the system. We have this file that we call mailer. This file just has a class or a function that when you call, providing the arguments that are specified there, it will just send an email. So it will log into the email address that is specified in your environment file, and then it is going to send that email out. Sometimes we add BCC for us to be able to monitor if the emails are going out the way it is, but on your production, this BCC will not be there for the email sent out. There's no security breach to this, because the email sent out are actually not sensitive information, but majorly log in, activate. So for those of you that call and say you can't activate, it is the BCC I check to see if you actually have a reset email, if you actually clicked on the link and all of that. So you can decide to, on your production, decide to add BCC and add an email address that you can use to check how the system emails are sent. If it actually goes to the user, you will get a copy of it. If it doesn't, you won't get a copy of it. All right, any questions? So we have three important directory here: the pages directory, the templates, and the uploads directory. Whenever you try to upload something on the system, you try to upload screening results from the lab, you scan in some lab results and you get a message failed. The problem is because you don't have permission to the uploads folder. For all of your internal server, the permission was already set to be able to change the mode, and also to be able to set the permission to the directory owner. This uploads folder should also be protected, because every file you upload goes into this directory. The way I built the system is not to store files and images and anything in the database, but stores a reference to it in the folder, so that you can easily, when you click on it, the link that the database, the row gives you, it just looks for it in the folder and opens that file. Once you overwrite this file in any way, then the link stays, you click on it and the file will not be found. The templates directory holds the templates, the offline templates that the system will give you when you click on download offline template, to be able to enter records offline and then upload the same template back into the system. Again, this comes in the batch of training we have for the end user training starting from next week. We have the pages directory, which is the directory that holds all of the different modules for the different parts of the system. And so we're going to go to that to look at the source code from this part of the system. So the first thing we'll look at today is the administration module. We're going to look at the source code that controls the super user functionalities for the patient management and reporting system. So this contains a lot of files and directories in them. We have a script directory that just holds JavaScript code for validation. Now, this system uses multiple programming languages. Like we say, we have for front-end HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, and several JavaScript libraries, jQuery, Ajax, and the likes, all of JavaScript libraries. And then we have the scripting language. We have PHP, we have Python. And then we use, for the chart and the plots, we use JavaScript also. Then we have a lot of files that control the different functionalities. The includes directory is the directory that holds all of the common files that should be used with all of the other files that exist. Let's look at what the include files are. So we have the footer, the header, the head, the init, and the nav. If you want to add a new file and you want to add it to maybe the navigation bar, you will come to the admin nav. So it's all named according to the name of the module and the name of the functionality. So if it's for navigation, admin nav, this is for the footer files, admin footer, things like that. And this navigation just holds the code that controls the navigation bar or the drop-down menu you see. This is where you set them. If you have a new functionality, you want to add it to the drop-down menu for users to see, this is where you set that drop-down menu. Now we use the navigation also things that we also use access control to be able to check if the user has a particular permission before that drop-down menu is even visible for the user to see. Now we'll see that we have that control that checks whether this user has a particular permission. If the user has a permission, display this navigation bar. If not, there is no navigation bar for that person. So you don't even see anything that doesn't have the functionality that you don't have a permission to. Anybody with question?
There isn't a upload uploads folder in the file. Do we have to have exact same folders? Oh, Harriet and Vincent. Sorry, I forgot.
I don't understand the question. In this administration?
No, in the, I think it's the countries folder.
Yeah, you say you don't have uploads?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we have to have an uploads directory there for it. But I think you should have an uploads already. You don't have an upload?
I'm checking the...
No, you won't see it visible because it's a hidden file. It's hidden?
It's not hidden either. I checked.
You checked also?
Yeah.
So did you go to, so which of the server are you on? The production?
I'm on the staging. So would it be on the production?
Yes, it's on the production.
Oh, okay.
All right. But in any case, I will still, because all the servers need to be updated with new functionalities, I will still check and do a run through to make sure that all the folders are there and all of the functionalities are up to date for all of the countries. So the folder is within the countries or the countries/country directory, and then you see the uploads there. So
yeah,
let me.
So it's Vincent then country. So yeah, so it's not in there.
It's not in there. Yeah, so you should find pages, templates, uploads. If you don't have the
So
uploads,
I have pages and I have template, but I don't have uploads.
okay, so we'll reset that just after the training workshop.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we look at how the navigation file is set up, and we looked at navigation is created in the nav file. The authentication is done with the init file. The header file just holds includes all of the headers, the head, the init, the nav, and then we have the head, which holds all of the metadata that you set. So we have all of the metadata that is set, all of the scripts to include all of the links to external style sheets and fonts that we need for the whole project, and also everything scripts that controls the table formatting and pagination that we see across the tables on the interface. So this head file holds all of that. So if you need to add new metadata to the head, this is where you do that. If you have links to external scripts or external style sheet from a CDN that you want to add and you want it to be common across all of that administration module, you add that in the head file. Okay, and then we also have, now let's just go to all of the functionalities. So here we have a file we call admin home. This is the file that controls the home page. This file has no access control. You just have to be assigned the administration role to be able to get to the admin home. This is where you get the home page information, and then you can get all of your navigation bars that links or that list all of the functionalities that you have for the administration module. Then we have different files. This file definitions is almost like the name. If you see all hiv.php, just means that you are trying to get all HIV screening. The code that gives you all of HIV screening, let's look at that. So the codes that give you all of the HIV screening is here. So it looks at the permission. First of all, if the person doesn't have the supervised screenings permission, it just redirects the person back to the home page without allowing the person access to this. The person has the permission to view all the HIV screenings. Then this now collects this information from the database table where the HIV screenings are saved, and then displays this in a nice table on the interface for you to be able to see all of the screenings. So this is the file that controls the permission. So in the event that maybe during HIV screening there's a new column that was added and you want that column to be displayed, this is where you come to add that column here so that the interface can display that new column that you want. So the process is, it goes to the database table, gets the information, displays it on a form or table or whatever on your design, on your container you want on the interface for you to be able to see. How you get this display is you specify the name of each of the columns for each of the database table. The same thing with another file we call all STI, all TB. So just as it is named, it is exactly what it does. We have ANC hepatitis screening.php. The files are named according to the functionality. It just means antenatal hepatitis screenings record. It just gets all of those records. We have ANC HIV screenings, the same thing. So when you look at the names of the file, you will know exactly what it does. Now there are some files that just displays a form for people to fill out. And when you fill out that form, there's another script that processes that form. When you begin to see things like insert assign sites.php like this, it means that you went to a file called assign site and you try to assign a user to a testing site. And when you clicked on submit, then this file takes over processing and now sends that information that you entered from here to the database or whatever you want it to do. You want it to alert the user, you want it to send an email, that is the file that deals with it. You also see files like update something. It just means that you are trying to update that information. Update country means you are trying to update maybe the country of birth of the client. Update date of birth, the same thing. Update ethnicity. So the names are somehow explanatory that you will know based on the name what it does. I want to print out the immunization record of somebody. There's print immunization, print parish. These are the files that controls it. So in the event in the future you want to edit part of a source code that does something in particular, this is where you come to You look at the file, the name might direct you straight to what functionality it holds. You can actually also look at the link from the bar, and that is why the link is exposed. It is not the link that you don't see the extension or anything. You can look at the navigation bar and the interface to see what page controls that page, or what file controls that page, and go to the file name exactly as it is. Now let us look at how we can use the interface. So when I do this and I try to log in here, I now see this link, and I see that this directory countries/country.country login. This is what controls this page, and I can come to that file and look at the file. So we'll go to what we saw there, and then so we want to go to country/country, and then when we look at that, we'll see that content login.php. So if a user reports an error they're getting from a particular page, you can actually use whatever link is on the navigation bar to locate the file that controls that page. There's another manual that you will get at the end also. There is an error coding manual that tells you when you get a particular error, this is the problem. If the error tells you contact administrator, it just means it's a database problem. And if the error tells, so those definitions will be there for you to know when the problem is in a database, or the problem is in the way the user entered the record, or is a user problem. So you will know exactly where to head when someone reports an error. You'll be able to tell, and also how to look at the error logs to know that this is where your error is coming from, because the error log said that you try to access this page and you did not enter this value, it is missing, or something in the source code is the problem, or something within. So let's look at how we look at the log file. The log file for Apache web server is located in the var log and Apache 2. I think because the admin user is turned off, we have to sudo this. So I'll just open the file. We go to the var, the log, the Apache 2, and error.log. Now this will show you all the errors that we've had today. You see the date of the error and the time. So if someone tells you that I tried at, now the server time is set to the time at the location of your server, but on the source code I had set all of the time to report the time for Eastern Caribbean countries. So the time we'll get is Atlantic Standard Time. So if your server is in Germany, you are still getting Atlantic Standard Time. So this now shows what time the error happened. Now my own server is not anywhere where I am. It is in a different region, and I did not reset my time. So it will now look like, when you look at the error log, you will see exactly at the time what was the cause of the error that happened. Okay, so here I have errors that I can use to check development. I have errors that I try to go to a particular site without being a particular directory, without being an admin user, and it tells me why I got the error here. So you begin to read all these error messages. You can decide to walk through them to make sure those errors don't occur. But the directory for the error is var log apache 2/error.log. You can decide that you want to send these errors via email, set them in your configuration files, or the way you set our files. So another thing I will do before we look further at the source code is also to look at the configuration that was done on the server before, so you know where to locate things and where to change things. On the server, before we actually installed the project in this HTML directory, we set up the Apache server, we installed it, we used UFW firewall enabled, and before that was enabled, we allowed all of Apache services, HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH, and OpenSSH on that to go through the firewall. And then we installed MySQL server, and then we did MySQL secure installation. Then we also installed PHP, and libapache2 mod PHP had to be installed also. And then after those installation, we created SSH key on the server to be able to connect to the repository. Now that SSH public key was shared on the repository, and once there's a public private key match, then we begin to be able to send communication using RSA between the GitHub and the server. Now let's look at the Apache 2 configuration file. So one thing with Nano is that when you enter the wrong file, it will still open you a blank page. It creates a file when that file does not exist and gives you the file if it exists. So on this configuration file for Apache, one of the settings we did is when you come to this www directory file, there is this options, then indexes, follow symlink. Because we don't want to keep displaying the Apache homepage, we delete the indexes option from here. And then whenever you have anything installed newly and you want Apache to be able to read that configuration file, this is where you come to include that configuration file below there at the end of it. Let's say, for instance, if I install PHP my admin here, I can come down here. Let's say if I install PHP my admin, I can come to the end here and just write include, and then I'll just put the link to the config file. I'll say /etc/phpMyAdmin /apache.conf. So whenever you install something new, a new package that you want to be able to display, you can add it here to this conf file, Apache configuration file, to know where to get the configuration file for that new package or for that new service that you have installed. Okay. We also went to the 00default.conf file, and that is the file where we configured the virtual host. So in the event you change your port, your HTTPS is no longer on port 443 or HTTP is no longer on port 80, you have to configure new virtual host, and that is located in the etc file. So let's just open that file /etc directory. I think it's Apache 2, and it will be site enabled 000 default. So you can change this when you want, if you don't want it to be on the 00 default, and you create a new file. And then here is where we configure virtual host for port 80 and port 443. So it will just tell the server name. What is the name of your site, the domain name we have created. So for most of you, you have ecbs.gov.vc. For St. Vincent, we have ecbs.health.gov.ag or something like that. You put that server name here. That's the domain name of that server, not the IP address. And then the root of the document, we saw that the document root for the files is HTML, and then the name of the file that you have cloned. And then allow override all. Because I have already put in my encryption for SSL, we have this automatically added when I installed SSL there. But all you type in is just up onto directory, close directory, and then close virtual host. And then do the same thing for port 443. During the configuration of SSL, you can actually specify if you want all traffic to redirect to HTTPS from HTTP. So whenever anybody requests with HTTP, it just automatically gives HTTPS. So that configuration is done when you install the SSL. Now I use Let's Encrypt for SSL installation, and we set auto renew to dry run, so that every 90 days when your SSL expires, it automatically renews your SSL certificate. If you want to check if your certificate is okay, your system is secured, we can use a service we call SSL Labs, or I can build you a service if you want. You can come to SSL Labs, and on SSL Labs, let's see. On SSL Labs, you can actually check your server. You want to make sure that your server rating is at least an A. If it's not an A, then you need to reset your SSL certificate. You need to check if your certificate is expired. You really want your certificates to be an A to prevent all other levels of attack. Now let's try ecbs.gov.vc. You want to be able to, since open SSH is allowed, you want to look at this. You want this to be able to scan the server, to be able to tell you if that server is exposed to any vulnerability. So what you want to do every month is to maybe come to SSL Labs, or if you want it built in, and make sure your server rating is still an A, or you want to make sure that the certificate is still valid. You can see the date of the certificate was issued and the date the certificate expires in 2 months and 20 days. Now this certificate after expiry will auto renew, and for countries that set their SSL themselves, it depends on how you did your settings. For those I did for, it will auto renew every 3 months. Okay, so it will check against all sorts of attacks, Heartbleed, and all of the rest of the common attacks to the site. Yes? Anybody with a question? So wait and see how this gives the rating so that it will be something you do in the maintenance. Now the server rating is A, which means your server is as secured as it should be. You can actually make the rating A+ if you want, and that would be key exchange. We can change all of the cipher strength and everything if we want to, and make this an A+ rating. And that is a different layer of code. I can do it for countries who want that done, but an A is just as fine as A should be. You want to make sure that your server supports TLS 1.3. There's no longer support for SSL2 or SSL3 or TSL 1.1. Those are the versions of HTTPS that are subject to any type of attack. You want your certificate transparency to be yes. You want your valid from and the valid until to be valid from is still valid and until to expire sometime in the future. You want to keep track of this in case for whatever reason your SSL is not auto-renewing. Okay, you want to look at other things and make sure that the protocols that are supported by your server is not anything less than 1.2 TLS. You should not support 1.1, 1.03 and 2 to be able to be safe from other attacks. You can look at the cipher suite. You can edit the cipher suite to now change your rating to A+, which means that you're even more super secure. Okay, and then you look at all of the handshake from all the different devices that was scanned on your server. So for those in IT here, you can actually save the site. I'll put it in the chat, and you can just periodically scan every month. Scan your server to just make sure it remains secured. So I'll just leave that in the chat for anybody who wants to have that. Okay, so we can scan. You can just go there now and scan your site and just make sure your rating is an A for your site. I just did that for St. Vincent live server. Other people, you can do it for your live servers and make sure you have your servers that are secured as it should be. Your HTTPS protocol is as secured as it should be. If your certificate is self-signed, you will have security issues. So you have to try this out to see how you want to edit all of your cipher suites to make sure that you are up to date with the cipher suites that are not exposed to any form of attacks. All right, anybody with question?
I had to step away from my desk like for a couple of minutes and I missed a couple of things. So I just wanted to find out how soon we're gonna get the recording so I could catch up when it's out.
I want to make that recording available at the end of today. I didn't make yesterday's one available because I just felt I'll repeat today's one. So yesterday's on today, part of the things, or I can make both available. But by the end of today, you'll get a link to it. It will all be on YouTube, so you can rewatch as many times as possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So anybody needs clarity on other things before we go back to looking at the code? So we've seen how the settings that we did on the server to be able to know, to be able to get the different site. Also, I'll go back to this for you to see. Now, if you have any intention to, maybe you have a live server that's a production and a pilot, and you just want to have one server. I know some of the islands have just one server. This is also where you configure that. You can configure a second port 80, and you put the server name here, maybe len.cbs5.mildredgroup.com, and you do the same thing for 443 to point to a different route, which means that at the root of your application here, you should have both the len site, so you see two folders here, and you'll be pointing that vhost configuration to the different one. So you can actually use one server to serve both sites if you want to. All right, and then you can use one SSL to control both. You get certificates for each of them, but one SSL run will do both. Okay, so again, anybody who doesn't want to have two servers anymore but wants to have one, you can let me know before December to reconfigure one server to most likely the production to also hold the len site, so that especially if you are on a pay-as-you-go system and you want to reduce cost. Okay, we've looked at the admin directory, and in this directory administration, we saw how the files were named, and it is the same convention for others. So the other module that we'll look at is the monitoring and reporting. So this is also the same structure like we saw with administration module. We have the includes folder. Every module has an includes folder that controls all of those common files, and authentication also, or authorizations. we also have the script folder that holds every custom JavaScript written to validate each of the inputs on these files. Now, we want to look at the monitoring and reporting module controls the surveillance dashboard, where you get all of the reports that are automatically generated, and where you get all of the visualization of data based on the reporting indicators that were set. You want to look at different things. You want to look at maybe the risk behaviors of everybody who was screened. You'll see a file called risk behaviors. The files are always named according to what they do. And so it will be easy for you to locate a file if you're not going through the directory. Let's say you go through the directory and it tells you that you can get a file called a file that actually holds forms. You want to enter a form. Okay, we'll do that with the screenings and management. That will be better illustrated. But this just follows the same name convention as the administration, where the files are named according to the functionality that they perform. We'll see find case information is somebody has a missing unique ID. You want to retrieve the person's record. You see EMTCT, exactly what it is. You want to get records that is exactly the EMTCT validation forms that they have in country. When you see things like risk history, you want to look at the risk behaviors history of a particular client. When you look at risk behaviors, you're looking at the risk behaviors of those screened or of those positive. So the name registered pharmacy is also looking at all of the pharmacies that exist, the same thing. All right. So when you now start getting files like update something, you're updating a particular file. And this update name means you're updating names of clients, update date of birth, you're updating date of birth, update ethnicity, the same thing. The files are named according to what they do. All right. So the most complex of them all is the screenings and management. That is the largest module of the system. So let's go there. So this has hundreds of files, and it has a folder that has hundreds of files. We have the includes folder that includes the common file, exactly as we have seen in the administration module. But it has something called forms. Now we have several forms. We have forms from registration of clients to risk behavior forms to symptom review forms to clinical notes forms and all of those forms. Let's go to the forms directory. In the forms directory, we have several forms, and these forms are controlled by other files also. Now, if I want to fill a form for a client that, let's say a client comes for pretreatment adherence counseling, we'll find a file named pretreatment adherence counseling. Or let's say a client is a client that was assessed that will not be adherent to the medication, and you want to do an adherence strategy work plan. The file that controls that is going to be adherence strategy work plan. When you want to get the care card for an adult ad care card is the name of the file that controls that, the name of the form that controls the design or the display of that adult care card on the wherever it is included in. So on the doctor's page where they want to get the care card for a client, this is the form that controls it. We want to do an initial clinical evaluation for an adult. You find adult initial clinical evaluation. Now, why these files are named this way is for you to be able to easily understand, for continuity, from ease of maintenance. And when you go to these files, if you need to add new fields to the forms, this is where you come to locate the form, add a new field, look at the file that processes that page, add that field to be extracted from the form, and also look for the table of the database. Now, let's look at one of them, and I'll show you how you can walk through adding new fields to a form and adding that column to a database. Let's say, for instance, we want to look at let's look at the baseline form, for instance. I want a short form that won't take our time. I'm going to clear this. It is interrupting me. I think I got the name wrong. It's going to be baseline form.php. Now, when we look at this form, the baseline form is a form where we'll fill baseline information. So one of the best things to be able to understand this in deeper details is to attend the end user workshop to understand the use and the functionalities extensively of the system. That workshop that runs from 23rd of September to I think 23rd of October. There are always 2 sessions. If you attend that workshop, you will understand the source code even deeper because you know the functionalities and you understand the functionalities. You'll be able to understand the code even more than you understand it. On that baseline form is a form where the first time a client walks into a system or is registered for care management, the positive HIV positive client. That's the form where baseline information is taken, like the weight of the client. If the client is on ART already, the regimen the client is on, and all of the medication, things like the contact person for the client, all of those kind of information that you want for the person, the drug allergies that the person has. That is that form that we use for baseline. Baseline form is the form that controls that. At the top of every form, you will find a jQuery code that does the processing or that links to the processing page. And so that's why I said that there are several languages on this. Beneath the form, we have plain HTML and CSS where we design the form. You'll find the ID of the form, that is the ID that speaks by jQuery here, to be able to send this to a processing page called Update Baseline. Anytime you want to find the processing page of a form, you have to look at the ID here of that form. So on the form tag, you have to look at the ID attributes and the name or the value of the attributes of that ID. And then you have to look for a jQuery that has that ID, a hash. So if its ID is hash, if its class is dot. And so you look for that baseline that is the same name as the value of the ID. You look for the baseline and look for the URL for the AJAX here. And that URL is the file that processes this form. So in the event I come to this form and I said, I want to add a new form field here, apart from drug allergies, let's say I want to add current medication as a new field. If I add that field here, we need to store that information somewhere, which means that we'll come to the processing page, which is Update Baseline here. So let's go to that page and you will look for this part that extracts the information entered into the form. And then you create a new variable here that extracts that information based on the value of the name attribute for that field. And then you want to see the name of the table that saves the information will be here on the update query, which is the ISH_baseline information. This tells you the name of the database table. Then you want to go to that table and add that column that will hold that information. So it is in 3 steps. You add a new field on the form, you come to the processing page to extract that new field information, you go to the database table to add a column that holds that information, and then you are done with a new addition. Is it clear for everyone? Does everyone at least understand? Okay, we are quiet and I'm not comfortable. I feel that there's no understanding established.
I'm good. I understand.
Okay, all right. So it's exactly the same process for all of them. So we have looked at the 3 modules that control the patient management and reporting system. We saw the administration module that controls the administration role and the administration dashboard. We'll look at the monitoring and reporting module that controls all of the surveillance functionalities. And then we'll look at the screenings and management module that controls all of the clinical management functionalities, from client registration to screenings to antenatal to death to testing, and everything occurs in the screenings and management module. So that is the module that holds all the functionalities that you'll be getting support requests from most of the time. The screenings and management is where all the end users work with. So all the files, all the forms, and that is the one that will need more careful understanding. Okay, so as always, everything is named according to what they actually do. The documentation will still hold that again for you to be able to make reference to it in the future. Let's look at a little bit at the front end of these 3 that we have looked at the back end for you to understand or get more understanding about these functionalities. So the way this system was designed is when you log in or when the account is created for a user, the person who creates the account assigns the user to a role. The role has several permissions that are defined for that role. The permission assigned to the user within the role assigned is what controls what access that user has. I'll first of all log in as an administrator to see the administration functionalities. Now, the person with an administration functionality is the one who can upload all the offline screening templates. There's the person who configures the system with dynamic variables like the testing and management sites, the ethnicities, the health districts, the parishes, the gender identity list, the pharmacies, the drug and treatment regimen, the screening list, the vaccine list, and create the test modalities, the vaccination schedule, and all of the census and population information. Now, this configuration is the configuration that must be done before the system's first use, because all of these variables that are set here are what controls the options on the drop-down menu that the users see on their page. For instance, they want to select the ethnicity of the client. Whatever you set here in the ethnicity list is what populates the drop-down menu. Whatever you set in the testing and management site list is what's populating the drop-down menu of address of site or something. Whatever you set in the drug and treatment regimen is what drops down on the treatment plan when the doctors want to select the treatment plan. So these settings controls drop-down menu. So when you have a user complains about a particular option that they need on the drop-down menu, this is where you come to add that option. So let's say we have ethnicities. Let's say we have I don't even know if the spelling is correct. And then we have, let's say we have these ethnicities, and for some reason the users can't see the ethnicity of a person on a drop-down menu. They can now call to ask that they need something added to the drop-down menus for a new option to be able to be selected. This is where you come to put that ethnicity here, and then they begin to see that on the drop-down menu. Okay, so this is done just so that you avoid programmatic addition and subtraction of things that might change so frequently. Then we have the users and accounts, where the users accounts are created, roles are assigned, permissions are assigned. The users account is managed. When they complain about activation or they complain about they don't have a certain permission, we manage the user by clicking on this, enter the email address and edit the permissions. Where you register a pharmacist, the user who is going to be having the pharmacy permission is going to be registered as a pharmacist on the system, and a pharmacy assigned to that user, so that when they dispense or record anything about prescription is going to be recorded against that pharmacy. Where you have a user, you attach the user to a testing and management site, so that when they do screenings, it's going to be recorded against the site where they are attached to. And then you can also come to view all the users of the system. And when a client walks in, they have an account on the system, they can't remember their unique ID. This is where you come to find missing unique ID, either by the first name, last name, or testing code. Most of the time you might end up using testing code, because for countries that do not register their names of the clients and they just use unique ID, the next option is testing code to use to identify what the unique ID of the client is. Now, more than one person can have the same testing code, which means that there are other things when you want to search by testing code that will help you to know, like the date of birth, the country of birth, and all those things, to be able to find a match that is a unique ID of the client. Testing code can always be generated on the fly once you know the client's first letter of first name and first letter of mother's maiden name and first letter of last name, the year of birth, and the gender of the client. Then you have generated a testing code. Then we have the updates personal information of clients. Some personal information and security information like the unique ID, the country of birth, the ethnicity. Nobody can update this apart from the administrator. The reason is you don't want people changing names and changing ethnicity and changing dates of birth and all this information that can never change. If I was born in Grenada, I remain born in Grenada, there's nothing that can change my country of birth. Where country of residence can be changed and updated anywhere, we know that those things can only be changed when there's an error in entry, not that next year my country of birth will change or next year my ethnicity will change. These are fixed information that never changes. So when it's entered in error, then you contact the admin or the super user to make that update. Then the supervision is where the supervisor, which is the super user, can actually look at each of the different testing sites, look at the different data entered by each site, who entered the record, look out for the completeness of that record. Also look at whether they are entering records on that site as they're supposed to. This is where we get that. Then you can also track for compliance issues like the time between when the client tested positive and when the client is in care, and you do that looking at pending care registration when you want to see the dates the person was referred, and now compare with the current dates to understand why the client is not yet in care. You can view all clients in care, you can get all HIV screenings, TB screenings, syphilis screening, all other screenings that are recorded. You can get screenings by antenatal clients. You want to see the HIV screening of an antenatal client, TB, syphilis, other screenings also. You want to look at screenings also of exposed infants, and also the prevention distributions, like how many condoms were given, how many self-test kits were given, all of those prevention distributions here. Also the history tracking is also for surveillance purpose, where you want to look at address change history of clients in the events that you have an epidemic and you want to just see if it's just that it is the same people who are positive that are actually transmitting this. Like, is there a migration from a particular address to a particular address, and that address used to have a lot of prevalence and this new address has a lot of prevalence now? Those kind of things. It will rarely be used, but it is just there in case that rare occurrence ever happens. Okay, we can track pregnancy history also of the client and screening history of the client here. So that is the administration functionalities. This is the page where you see that, and those source code are those files in those administration modules that controls all of these functionalities. Then we log in again, and if we log in and that account we logged in with is assigned the screenings and management role, then we are welcome into the home page of the screenings and management. If the person is a pharmacist, you want to first select the pharmacy. Now this drop down menu is going to be controlled by what the administrator sets. Now because I have nothing, there is nothing here. Here we're going to see, here I made sure I had access to all functionalities for you to see. But this, what the user sees, depends on the permissions. We have these functionalities for general population screenings that all VCT providers will have to be able to create client accounts, register information about the client, look at client screening history, and register new pregnancies, enter antenatal information. This is where all of that happens. And then referrals also, where they refer clients from a testing site to a management site or for prevention interventions. This is where referral happens electronically. Then we have care registrations and initial information. This is where, at the management site, the referred client is now registered into care when they show up, and where their initial evaluation is done and recorded, both for HIV, syphilis, hepatitis, TB, and also we just recently added leprosy. Then we also have prevention and control and PMTCT is where all of the risk reduction plan and all of the prevention services like PrEP and PEP happens, and PMTCT is where all of the pregnant clients who have been reactive or positive are referred to, and this is where all those information and the data is collected. We have the psychosocial support and adherence counseling, where we schedule appointments for counseling and then record information about the sessions. The three types of information we record are pre-treatment, pre-treatment assessments, and then there is a strategy work plan, and then there is a medication adherence 1. So there are 3 types of appointments. The first one before the client is treated to test if that client is going to be adherent. The second one, adherence strategy, is when the client is not assessed to be able to be adherent and you want to put the client on maybe trial medications to see how adherent the client is to the trial medications before actually prescribing the ART. And then if the client is on ART and returning for another visit, the medication adherence assessment is the one you use to check if the client was actually adherent, like they say. Those are the forms for counseling. Then we have the appointments and patient monitoring that deals with client appointments for clinical management for CD4 and viral load screenings, and also we have that for the clinical management is also both for HIV, for TB, for every other management for a HIV client. We also have the clinical management part where the care card is filled, symptom review, and for every other type of the treatments. We have treatments for HIV, for syphilis, for hepatitis, and for all STIs. We also have the central medical store and supplies where ARVs are recorded, dispensed, distributions are also recorded. The stock is looked at when the stock is low, and this is where the surveillance reports for the number of people that were prescribed or that were dispensed a particular medication, when, how many times stock was running low, how many times restocked, and all of those information for reporting. Then we have the pharmacy part, which is where the pharmacists actually record all of the dispense for prescriptions for ART or any medications used for OI for HIV clients. So these are the functionalities for the screenings and management module. We have the last one module, which is the surveillance module. And when I log in with a user that is assigned the monitoring and reporting role, then I am welcomed here where we can see the different types of reports that are generated. So we have all of the reporting indicators. We have the M&E summary sheets that usually is submitted here, where the values are automatically pulled out, calculated, and reported, and all of the screenings and positivity reports for HIV, syphilis, TB, all of the behavioral reports where we look at the screenings and prevention distribution for all of the key populations. We also have the antenatal reporting where we get the EMTCT report that is usually reported, and also the pharmacy reports where we get the drug dispense reports, and then the normal OECS summary sheets for pharmacy reported. So these are the reports. It is more comprehensive than this. We'll do that at the end users training workshop, and that starts next week. So anybody with any question? All right, in the absence of question, this is where this morning session ends, and the afternoon session is a repetition of this morning. So feel free to attend if you want to, but if not, you are covered for the day. I'll try to get the recordings available to you by the end of the day. All right, thank you everyone, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, Mildred.
Okay.
Thank you.